It's a movement, in my opinion. It's a movement, and we were chosen to heal ourselves so then we could heal our families, and then we could heal. It just ripples out and ripples out and ripples out. I think we are making a huge, huge change.
Hello, nurses and nurse coaches. Welcome back to the Nurse Coach Collective podcast. I am your host, Heather Lapidus, and I am here today with Nurse Coach Sally Davidson from upstate New York. She is a board-certified nurse coach, an advanced energy and breathwork guide, and a shamanic Reiki Master. Sally has a full-time private practice helping women to find clarity, connection, and courage to start to turn their pain into purpose, their trauma into triumph. Essentially, she guides her clients to live a life of freedom and purpose. Sally, welcome.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so thrilled to get to have you here on this podcast. And before we went live, you actually mentioned something that made my heart swell, which was that maybe the last time you and I were on a one-to-one conversation was back when you had your application called for the Nurse Coach Collective. Is that right?
Yeah, that's so true. And I still remember that day.
What do you remember about it?
I was currently working. I was in my office at work, feeling that burnout, that like I just felt like something was not right. I did love my job at that time. I loved being a nurse. I loved being a leader. I love my patients, but there was just something kind of missing. The collective kept popping up, and then I had a call with you, and it was really life-changing. I know a lot of us say that, and people are probably like, but it's true. For me, it was really life-changing. As soon as I talked to you as a manager and then a director of ICU and as an ICU nurse, talking to you, just what I wanted to see for my patients wasn't happening. And then I was just feeling this disconnect. And so, yeah, I usually hesitate, and I just signed up. And that was really the start of a big change in my life, personally, professionally.
Well, you mentioned some things in passing there about like your nursing background in terms of the number of years, or shall I say decades, that you have in this field and the level to which you had risen. Can you say that again, just what your background was at the time that you and I were on that call?
When we were on the call, I was probably a good 25 years in, maybe 26 years in. And I was a manager of 2 ICUs in 2 separate buildings at that time, because we're building a new hospital where I live. I had been in nursing, 25 years by then. Most of it in critical care, started in oncology, did my whole route of supervisor, different things. But I had been in a leadership position for quite a while, but still loved patients, still loved bedside. I have a good 30 years. And when I left my job full time, I was a director of nursing for critical care services.
It's pretty awesome to hear the amount of experience and just professional exposure that you already had under your belt when you entered into this world of nurse coaching. And then on top of that, to be able to say, I still learned so much. I still grew so much. This was still this life-changing pivotal moment in my career. I think that's pretty huge at that point. So tell me more about that if you can, Sally. Like, how do you make sense of nurse coaching being this pivotal change at that point?
I think for me personally, I was starting to hit a point where I just wanted to see things be differently for my patients. And then I really didn't realize for myself. I mean, I was seeing some changes in myself that I just was feeling a little unsettled. And I wanted to holistically heal, take care of the nurses, the patients. I did a lot of stuff against the rules. I brought animals into the ICU. I let families, I have a very big blended area where we are. So diverse population. And so people at the end of death and dying, I mean, there's a lot of different things that they want to have their family member pass along. And so I was always a bit of a rule breaker when it came to that stuff, because you really have to take care of the whole person and the family, especially in the ICU.
We love a good rule breaker around here.
Yeah. So I was definitely a rule breaker. But I just was feeling unsettled, and I was feeling like, yes, I was in that position to maybe make change. But this was a little bit of an issue for me when I walked away as a director, because I felt like I have the inside track. So I felt like people were thinking, well, you could make change. But where I was at that point in my career, I knew the people above me, they weren't ready for the change that I was ready to make. And I felt like I needed to step away for my own personal reasons. And I always felt like if I come back, it's just going to be in a different capacity. To think that I was a nurse for 30 years or 25 years at that point, and all the things I learned about myself just in the collective, which then started my journey, my personal healing journey that I didn't even know I needed, was kind of brought out in the collective. Like, wow, I was taking care of patients like that in the ICU and in oncology and in the hospital, but I didn't have names for it. Personally, I didn't have names for it. And then as I started to like really dig into that in the collective and really step back and get that really broad view, I was like, wow, what am I doing? Like, I need to start to change. I just needed to like center back to who I really came here to, what I came here to do. What was my purpose? What is my service? And the collective really brought that to me. And even though I didn't go into private practice right away because of COVID, I always knew it would happen. I knew that I would be in service differently. And it started with the collective. And I say that like I get goosebumps because it is really true. It started my own healing journey, which has then rippled out. I think that the people that are signing up for the collective were chosen. You can believe it or not. It can be woo, whatever. The universe was like, healthcare is broke. It's sick care. There are people that need to do their healing. They have been kind of sent to the collective because we're not just, some of us are practicing as life coaches, but we still have our background as nurses, right? So we still have our background in nursing. So I have 30 years of sitting at someone's bedside, even though I was in a leadership position. That was my strength. And so I still have that. And then the collective just brought really that to light. Like, we need to be treating ourselves holistically, the nurses in the organization holistically, and the patients and their families holistically. And I knew that, but it gave me a name for it. It really allowed me to see, yes, this is what has to happen. And it's a movement, in my opinion. It's a movement, and we were chosen to heal ourselves so then we could heal our families. And then we could heal. It just ripples out and ripples out and ripples out. I think we are making a huge, huge change.
Yes. Well, I feel, listening to you, Sally, I feel like you are as passionate about this work, as passionate about this role, and as passionate about like the bigger, broader collective movement of all of us here together and where we are all striving to reach as just this incredibly powerful force for good within healthcare and in the world. You're like right up there with Peter and myself in terms of how we feel about this movement. So I love listening to you talk about this.
Yeah, I really honestly from my heart feel like that's what this is, because I literally just had a client last night who, in fact, came to me, ended up signing up for the collective. I have been coaching her for over a year. So she just graduated. It's rippled out to her family, to her children, the changes that she's personally made, and then the changes now she's going to make with her clients. It is one person at a time, one breath at a time, one change at a time, one meditation at a time, whatever we want it, whatever our flavor is. But we are changing. We were in service just to healthcare, but now we are in service to ourselves, to our families, and back to healthcare. And I think it is going to ripple out.
Okay, you said something really interesting before, which is that you maybe felt like you should put this into practice in your hospital, but you knew that they weren't ready for change. It wasn't going to happen the way you wanted. But then you found, hey, within myself, my personal growth, my own professional practice, there is some room for change, and I am ready for change. So first piece is like, there has to be that readiness and that openness for change. But then the piece that we often forget is that we usually don't end up just changing that one thing that we anticipate changing, right? Because there is that ripple effect. And once we make progress, once we grow in one realm, it just extends out and out and out to everyone around us, both directly and indirectly. And I think that's sort of what you're speaking to here.
I probably wasn't ready to understand that I needed to do some healing work because I had been burnt out. I had been working through COVID, yes, in a leadership position, but that was also very tough because you're asking the nurse that you've known for 20 years to do something over and over, work short-staffed, all the things that were happening. And then you have, my boss ahead of me that is like, okay, this is what has to happen. And the patient has to be taken care of. So that was still stressful for the bedside people, for everybody involved, right? And so I did recognize after going through the collective, that started my healing journey. So I started doing other things. I wasn't really in private practice at the moment, but I started my own healing journey. I do not believe that would have happened if I didn't start with the collective. It got something going in me. And then I started doing my own healing. And one of the reasons I stepped away is because I was starting to have anxiety, panic attacks. I was burnt out. That was not really looked at wonderfully, even though I had given 25, 26 years of service. It was a little bit of, I felt like a weakness, and I want that to change for people. People need to be able to say, I need a break. Like, I need a change. I need a break. I wasn't resourced enough to push that change. So I was aware enough that I needed to step back. I needed to continue my healing that I was so blessed to be made aware that I needed, that I didn't know I needed. And then I started to make that change. And then the ripple happened in my family. And then I did step away because I wanted to go to private practice. But I always know that maybe I will come back some way to serve. And maybe it is service peripherally. Maybe it will be service back to a hospital or healthcare in some way. And I'll just wait and see what happens. But I needed to heal first. And when I started to heal, which is why I think this is a movement, is because so many nurse coaches I see, and I don't know every nurse coach, but they are doing the work, right? They're healing. They have a coach. They're working. They're raising their vibration. And that is what is rippling out.
I believe it too, which is why I'm so dedicated. Really, my entire life kind of revolves around doing this work and helping more nurses like yourself enter into this world of nurse coaching, not because I know exactly what's going to happen on the other side. I don't. I literally never know. I never could tell someone, we go back 5 years, you and I could never have told you on that very first call that we had together what your outcome would be. I couldn't tell you the ways in which you would grow professionally. I could not begin to guess where you would take your professional practice. We could have fun, we could ideate, we could dream on things, and I could tell you that, yes, I truly believe it's possible. But it's about this journey that you're talking about, right? Trusting that process, letting things unfold. And clearly you've done that, but also clearly you're still doing that and realizing that what you're doing today, you have this full-time practice that you love. And maybe 5 years from now, you'll be doing something else. You'll be working in the system. You'll be influencing that ripple effect in a different way. I love that. I love that you're open to the journey.
Yeah, for a while I was kind of like, oh, it has to be this way. And I did in the last, breathwork changed my life a bit, as the collective did. And then I was coaching, and then I've done a lot of different work and different certifications, but breathwork was something that really kind of centered me in the last 6 months. And I really opened my mind to the journey is the journey, right? I'm still healing. I only bring things to my clients that as deep as I've gone, and I've gone pretty deep. But I continue to go deep. I continue to peel back my layers so that I can show up for life better. And it's happening, right? It's happening for me and for my clients. And my mission may change, right? My mission may change because we have such a sick care system. And so whether it's in the hospital or outside the hospital, mental health, that was a real eye-opener for me when I took a leave of absence, which I'd never done before for anxiety, that I felt the way that I did. And so it's not really good for people to not be able to speak up. And we have so many modalities, and that was really brought to light in the collective. There's so many modalities that are out there besides medication. I'm not saying nobody should ever have meds, but we just give more meds and more meds and more meds. We're so heavy pharmaceutically. There's so many holistic modalities like breath work, nervous system regulation, meditation, just activity, taking time for yourself. And we're not teaching that in nursing school. We're not teaching that to just the general population. And so recently I was like, oh, I think maybe my mission is that I really need to talk about mental health. I wasn't a mental health nurse, but it doesn't matter. I experienced how that felt to be on the other side of that when you say you need a break. And in this societally, right, we're just push, push, push. We're so much in that masculine energy of just pushing. I have been embracing my feminine side of leadership a bit more. And it's okay to take a pause. It's okay to take a break. And teaching your clients and helping them. I didn't even know what nervous system regulation is. How is that even possible being a nurse for 25, 30 years?
Well, you are not alone on that. I think many feel that way. It's a foreign concept because, as you said, it's not something that's taught in nursing school. It's not something that's taught on the job, even though Lord knows most nurses, dare I say all nurses, need to know how to regulate our nervous systems because we have jobs that are so physically, mentally, emotionally demanding that when we don't know that, what happens? We experience our own struggles with mental health or with burnout or with stress, however it shows up for each of us in a unique way. But without the tools, we're less equipped to help our patients or our clients, but also ourselves.
Right. And so that's why I really feel so inspired by the fact that so many nurse coaches, not coaches, but nurse coaches, are healing themselves and then helping others do the same. You don't even know the trauma that you might have had. You don't know how that's affecting you in your day-to-day. So I was, could be aggressive and wanted things my way. And, really stepping back and learning and then teaching my clients and holding space for them so that they know that there's nothing wrong with them. This is how they were wired, and we can rewire. We can regulate our nervous system. We can go back to our inner child. We can do modalities like breathwork that are so healing. And we just show up differently. And what better thing for us as nurses who are already serving to serve humanity.
You and I feel like we're a part of this really big movement, this huge collective of nurse coaches, because we are, right? At this point, or back when I started and back when you started, there were far fewer nurse coaches. Now, the Nurse Coach Collective alone has literally trained thousands and thousands of nurse coaches. So the movement is huge. But when we compare that to the 5 million nurses that are still floating around this country in all different places, the movement is still small. It is still just in its infancy, beginning to grow, which in my opinion is a really, really cool time to get to be a part of this because we are the game changers. I mean, you and I sitting right here, we are the innovators. We are the leaders. We are paving the way for just the epic change and the epic ripple effect, as you were talking about, that's going to be then coming from us and through us and following in our footsteps.
And for the nurse coach, there are people that are thinking about is this something I can do, or is this saturated, and we all have that comparison game because we see a small section of what's happening in the nurse coaching world. There's a small section of us. And even if you don't want to do your private practice, right, and you're staying in the hospital, you just have your communication skills. Your self-awareness after the collective is so different, which is why I think people start on this healing journey. And then you're also in a community of people that are starting to do their healing work, and it's more natural. And then people are more inquisitive. Whereas when we're at the bedside, we're kind of hammered all the time, and you stop being inquisitive. I mean, it's just what happens. You stop being inquisitive, you stop growing. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but a lot of us we're just trying to get through the day. We were just trying to get through the day.
Just waiting for that moment that you can clock out.
Right. So my growth had been stunted. And then after the collective, I just was it was almost like I opened this box that just had stuff keep coming out. And I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing? Literally, I remember having those thoughts, the growth and the excitement about the growth, even though sometimes your healing journey can be tough personally. But the growth that comes when you start to hit those edges, it's tough. But then as you pass the edge and you're like, oh, this is what it's about. And then you hit another edge and you just continue to grow. And then your life in general becomes so much better. So you are able to serve in a different capacity because you're so much more resourced. You learn that you need to be resourced and you learn to have boundaries.
Well, let's talk about some of these different directions that you can go, because I like that you are continuing to mention, for some nurse coaches, they are going to be called to stay at the bedside, right? And improve their communication skills, improve their relationships. And just that alone is going to make a world of difference when you bring nurse coaching into that setting. Others who are maybe in a similar position to where you were, right? In leadership, in management, maybe have a bit more capacity to change things on a system level if they have an organization, an institution that is open to that. And we're now seeing a lot of nurse coaches break in at that higher level and really change things system-wide on their unit, on their, their whole hospital, their whole chain of hospitals, you name it. Or then we see a lot of nurse coaches who are breaking out and going into private practice and going the business route. And I think it's important, as you said, to remind ourselves that there's no pressure to go one way or the other, right? There's no right or wrong way, because we need nurse coaches at the bedside. We need them in leadership and management. We need them in education. We need them in private practice. And so the beauty of it, and I like that you have been patient with yourself on your journey. The beauty of it is that we then, as individual nurse coaches, get to check in and get to say, okay, what is the direction that I really feel called to go? For most of us nurses, we've been working in a setting in which we have no choice over which patients come in the door and who we serve and support. And sometimes we love our patients, and sometimes, if we're being really honest, we are very challenged by our patients. So how cool is it then you step into the world of nurse coaching and you have a little bit of, or a lot of bit of freedom of choice in terms of where you want to go and the direction that you want to take this. So Sally, you eventually chose to go into private practice, and you've done some really cool things like incorporating all of these different holistic modalities. Will you speak a bit more to the kind of work you do, and who are your clients? Where do they come from? How do you create these clients in your business to be able to have a successful full-time practice?
I have, interestingly, had a very local clientele. I've been building my virtual community, but I've had a lot of luck with local clients. Local, they want to be in-person clients. And so I have been reaching out within my community. I have clients online too. I have virtual coaching clients. I have done a lot of work with inner child, with healing modalities, such as called soul retrieval, with a woman out in San Diego, Kim Beekman, one of my mentors, and doing a lot of spiritually kind of based work, not religious, but spiritually based, really having a different faith, giving me a different way to look at things, talking about my vibration. I obviously did a shamanic energy healing. I'm a shamanic Reiki Master, and that's all been along my journey to really get people to the root of what their problems are, because, you know, we get triggered with something currently. I thought my job was, I wanted to step away from my job. I thought it was very stressful. But when I look back now, I can see that I was just in a part of my healing journey that it probably was part of my job, but not all of my job. I was just in a section of time where I needed to heal a little bit more, because externally we tend to blame a lot of other things, right? And sometimes it's internal, like, not that there's anything wrong internally with us. We just are on that self-exploration of we're not just loving ourselves enough, or we might have had an old trauma that now is starting to bubble up after 40 years, and you're more reactive and more defensive. And you really need to get to the root of that. And that's kind of what I help my clients do. Get to the root, get to the vibrational root of what's going on. Energy work, I think, is huge, creating my own vibration. So I can call in clients, because I try not to live in this scarcity mindset, because being an entrepreneur is a whole new ball game, right? And it can have its ups and downs if you're in private practice, but there is a lot of freedom with that and choice to make your practice whatever you want it to be, and to explore and see what lands and what doesn't, and what feels good and what doesn't, and starting to check in with your body and what does feel good, so that you can teach your client to check in with their body and what feels good. I was very disconnected from my body in the beginning of my journey. And recently I did an breathwork facilitation course, and I just did an advanced section of that. And breathwork has really, in the last 6 months, started to really change my practice, change my life. It just was something I guess personally needed to ground me more. And it's a great healing modality. So I'm doing a lot with breathwork in my community. Actually just thinking about trying to put a benefit together for mental health to raise money. That's in my mind. It was just a new thing I meditated on. I do a lot more meditation, and I bring that to my clients if they're ready to make those changes. That's not for everybody, but it's grounded me. It's made me have a lot more self-love, which creates me to show up in the world differently, whether I'm serving my clients or I'm serving my grandkids or I'm serving myself. And learning that I need to serve myself first. I should have said it that way. I need to serve myself first, because the old adage of we need to have a full cup, but we need to have an overflowing cup, because everybody is much happier then. I mean, it just ripples out. I mean, I'll be honest, my husband thought I lost my mind. Like I was always going to work in the hospital. He works in the hospital. This is my purpose right now. And I know that, like I have a mission. I'm sometimes not even sure what it is, but I know it's different. And I do believe I'll serve in that population at some point again. It just may be differently. And I'm fine with that. I've really kind of dealt with that because, right, it is our identity. We're a nurse.
Once a nurse, always a nurse.
But once you're not in the hospital, people are like, oh, you're not really a nurse again, but we're still nurses. I was just saying this to my client the other day. I was like, she's signing her first client, and I'm like, but you have like whatever it is, 16 years of nursing experience. You've been coaching people. You've been supporting and holding space for people. That's not new. That's not new. And she's like, oh yeah, you're right. But we have that training already. We just looked at it from a different perspective through the collective and then through our own journey. So that's kind of, I guess the long version of what I do, but really I try to get to the root of what it is that my clients are struggling with, because I think sometimes we just don't know what that is. So I do a lot of deep healing work with them and somatic practices, which is just, I know all the rage, but they really have been life-changing for me.
There's a mirror that I'm almost seeing of like how you have walked your journey and found the places that you needed to grow and you wanted to heal. And then because you were willing to take a stand for yourself and do hard things, right? Walk through your own journey. Now you're able to leverage all of that by showing up more powerfully, serving your clients on that deeper level because you have walked your own walk. And now you're able to walk the journey with your clients. I think that we see that so often, but it is in all different ways, right? Because your journey is different from mine, is different from every other nurse coach. So we each get to use our own journeys to really play an important role in who we decide to work with, who we want to support, how we want to support them. And the other thing that I'm hearing you've done such an amazing job at is that you have really slowed down to consider, like, what are the components of healthcare that I have felt are missing for too long? And what are the other holistic modalities that I'm interested in, that I'm passionate about, that I believe in for myself, and therefore want to integrate into my practice? And that is such a just awesome part about nurse coaching, is that it can serve as this like umbrella under which you get to be a professional nurse coach, but you also get to bring in your Reiki, your energy healing, your breath work, all of these other modalities that make a more complete Nurse Coach Sally offering to your clients. I think that's really cool, and you've done such a great job with that.
I truly believe we each have our own medicine. And so we were sent here, we have this thing in us. And so when I hear like, well, this person is doing, but we have our own spin, right? And our own medicine. So what Heather's going to bring is different than what I'm going to bring. And who's going to be attracted to you, to your energies, but maybe different than is going to be attracted to my energy. And that's all good. Like it's all welcome. It's all good. And having that open mind and that lack of attachment, just being here to serve, but not at our own decline, which is what we were doing probably in nursing. We were serving because we should, but it was at our own decline. I mean, honestly, we weren't even meeting Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I mean, people aren't able to go to the bathroom in the hospital or eat.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
That needs to change. And we were doing a lot of these things, which I find so interesting as full circle, right? You're sitting at a patient's bedside, you're holding their hand, you're touching them. Maybe it wasn't called Reiki, but I was having, physical touch with someone. I was saying, look in my eyes, relax, breathe with me. Now I know what that's called. It's regulating their nervous system to mine. But as when I was a nurse at the bedside, I didn't even put all that together, but we're doing it. And so how beautiful that would be if we could really teach people that's a real thing. Like we were co-regulating with them. Someone that's nervous, hyperventilating, we're bringing them to us. So these are the things some of us were doing at the bedside, but I didn't have a name for what I was doing. I really didn't. And sometimes I feel silly that I didn't, but I didn't. I mean, that's the honest truth. I like to be vulnerable about that because obviously there's holes in the system. Like, can you imagine if we had all these holistic modalities in hospitals for patients and families? And I know some big centers do, but most hospitals don't.
Well, yes, I can imagine it. And hopefully we are all now imagining it. And also I want you to know, my hope with you and I sitting down and talking about this stuff, Sally, is that you sharing the things that you didn't know, well, the nurses who are listening to this and who identify with these things, now they will know because they've gotten to hear you talk about this. And now they will also understand that there's language for this, right? There's a name for what we sometimes have been doing all along, but just haven't had the language for. And nurse coaching is an awesome opportunity to really like not just put language to skills, but build out the skills and cultivate the mindsets and then open up all these professional doors for what can happen next. So we'll just let this land with whoever it needs to land with and whatever nurse needs to learn about what it is that you have to offer. I really appreciate you putting all of this out into the space, Sally. And before we begin to wrap things up here, I hear that in addition to your full-time private practice, that you also just did something really cool, maybe like in Hawaii. What am I hearing about this?
I did. I actually answered a call to action from another nurse coach and went to Hawaii to help co-facilitate. And I did breath work and I did a little shamanic journey for people to meet their spirit animal. And it was just so interesting. There were some coaches there. There were some people that were in the beginnings of their healing journey. So I do see retreat work in my future for sure. I love that intimate space where people are able to really connect back to who they are, be vulnerable, know that they're safe, and be open. You know, the shamanic journey piece was funny because some people are like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm just going to challenge people to be courageous, step out of your comfort zone. Like, this is going to touch all the external areas, right? We are going to touch our edges, but just do it. And there was another nurse coach there, Amy, and she taught me tapping and I zip lined. I have a huge fear of heights. And we were tapping, the nurse coaches were tapping in the zip line and I was like freaking out, but I was able to zip line. And so we really just supported each other and people were open-minded and we tried new things. So it was really, really fun.
Heck yes to nurse coaches coming together to create awesome magic and a powerful healing creative space. That just always warms my heart and makes me so happy to think about you all coming together and combining forces like that. And I want to add, for anybody who is listening, nurse coach, if you're hearing terms like, shamanic healing or Reiki, energy work, if you're listening and you're like, well, that's not what I want to do. I didn't know that as a nurse coach, I had to do that. I also think it's important to say you don't, right? You don't have to know about this stuff. You don't have to choose to incorporate these kinds of things. These are additional trainings that you have taken. These are your passions, your interests. And I like to let people know that this is what your practice can look like depending on what you're interested in and what your passions are. And also, if this is not your cup of tea, then your practice can look totally different. And that's what I love so much getting to listen to you, Sally, is just how incredibly unique your practice is. You've just come so far in your nursing career. You have come so far in your private practice, serving and supporting your clients. Now getting into retreat work, hopping on that plane and heading out to Hawaii. I love it because that's not a quick journey from New York.
No, it was beautiful though.
Yeah. Well, Sally, before we go, is there anything else on your mind, in your heart, that you want to have the opportunity to share with me or speak into this space?
I say all this that I say today from my heart. I have learned to lead more from my heart and be more aligned. And that really did start, that nugget started in the collective. This can be whatever you want it to be. You can be a functional medicine. You can be treating people for their diabetes. You can do whatever you want. I just happen to take this a bit of a spiritually new path with my practices. And it's just all welcome. And I just think it's so beautiful. And it is a way for us to just raise the vibration and the consciousness of the world. And for some that may sound like, wow, but I truly believe that from my heart. And I think it is so important for us as nurses to feel again that we belong here And we also belong to be happy and have joy and experience all the things that we choose to experience. I thank you guys because I still remember my call and you were just so upbeat. And I just knew I had to sign up. And I remember saying, my husband's like, what are you going to do with this? I'm like, I don't know yet, but I'm signing up.
I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Yeah. Well, I think most nurses aren't sure when they jump in. They just know and they feel the pull and they go for it and they say, I'm going to figure it out as I go.
I think one thing I guess I would leave on is that in healthcare, what I was seeing a lot when I left is like a lot of the blame game. And what I have learned in these last so many years for myself personally and in general is taking radical responsibility for my own self, my journey, my healing has started to change my life, and then I can help my clients learn to take back.
Sally, I am so glad that you taking radical responsibility for yourself looked like becoming a part of the Nurse Coach Collective. I think that the world of healing is a better place because we have you and everything that you're offering in it. And what you said there at the end, it really resonates, right? Most things that you want to bring into your healing, your offerings are welcome inside of nurse coaching. And all of the nurses out there who may feel, they're struggling or they're lost or they just don't quite feel like what they're doing is it, are welcome here in the world of nurse coaching. And we get to come together. We get to raise the vibrational frequency. We get to elevate the consciousness of the world, certainly with healthcare, and it starts with us, right? One nurse, one conversation, one patient, one client at a time. That is how we get to come together as a movement of nurse coaching to change the whole thing. So thank you again, Sally, for joining me. I'll drop your links into the show notes in case our listeners want to learn a bit more about you and your practice. And I've so loved spending time with you. What an honor. Congratulations on all of your accomplishments as a nurse coach, and I'll talk to you again soon.